Okay, yun na. Pwede na. Okay, so today we'll be discussing yung accrual basis. Ay, accrual, yung adjusting. Okay, so first let's discuss muna yung accrual basis. Ang pag-record kasi ng pag-record ng mga ng income and expenses natin, we can either use accrual basis or cash basis. Actually, maraming types of basis of recording. Pero those are the main, yung accrual and cash. Under accrual basis, syempre alam naman natin to. Yung accrual, financial income is recorded when earned, tapos expenses are recorded when incurred. Right? Yung cash flows or yung timing of the cash flows, the time upon which we receive or pay the cash is irrelevant in recording the income and expenses under the accrual basis. Right? So, yung accounting, ginagamit ang accrual basis normally. Right? Tapos, meron din tayong cash basis. Like the name suggests, yung cash basis, income and expenses are recorded based on the cash or the cash flows. So, kung nakaka-receive tayo ng pera, that's when we will be recording your income. Tapos, kung nagbabayad naman tayo, that's when we will be recording our expenses. So, those are the two, right? Alam naman natin ang accrual basis na. So, nakalagay dito, meron tayong illustration. So, client paid Sea Wind Resort in Boracay Island 7,000 on April 8, 2020 for a one-day super deluxe accommodation on May 13, 2020. So, nagbayad ang isang kliyente sa isang resort for 7,000 na in which they will be accommodating the resort on May 13. So, April 8 sila nagbayad pero May 18 pala nila gagamitin. So, under accrual basis, the receipt of 7,000, we will be recording it as revenue on May 13. Siyempre, alam naman natin yun. Thus, under the cash basis naman, yung 7,000 na na-receive natin, that is already a revenue outright kahit hindi pa tayo nagre-render ng services. So that is the difference. So alam naman natin yun, right? Alam nyo ba yung accrual and cash? Yung difference nila? Gets nyo ba, Adi? Yung iba? Gets? Gets, di ba? Okay. Ito natin yung cellphone ko. So, yun. Tapos, merong periodicity concept. Okay. We also know what periodicity concept is. So, the life of the business is separated into smaller parts. We call them accounting periods or reporting periods. Right? So, normally, it is 1 year pero hindi ito consistent na 1 year. It can be every month, every quarter, every year, more than a year. So, and basta, depending on the business, it is different. The most basic accounting period, sabi dito, is 1 year. Entities differ in the choice of the accounting year, fiscal, calendar, or natural. So, kung fiscal, basta 12 months, basta consecutive 12 months, kahit anong time na mag-start or anong time na mag-end, basta 12 months yon. While the calendar year, of course, it begins on January 1, tapos it ends on December 31. Yung natural business year naman, it depends on the business. So, it ends when activities are at their lowest level of the annual cycle. Okay, so yung depende lang yun sa business. A period of less than a year is an interim period. Sabi dito, some even adopt an annual reporting period of 52 weeks. Okay, so yun. Alam naman, we will get back on the periodicity concept, pero the basic use of the periodicity concept is the life of the business is divided into periods. Tapos, yung period na yon, dapat nating i-report kung anong naganap sa business. So, either financially, what is the financial position of the business or the financial performance of the business for the specific period. Okay, so yun yung use ng mga periods natin. Tapos, next is the recognition and the recognition. Yung recognition, basically, it is recording items that meet the definition of an asset, liability, equity, income, or expenses. Kasi silang recognition, nag-a-add tayo sa mga elements na yun. So, kapag sinasabing nagre-recognize tayo ng asset, it means that we are adding amounts to the asset. Kung nag-recognize tayo ng liability, meaning nag-record tayo ng liability, hence nag-i-increase ang liability natin. So, yun lang ang meaning ng recognition. The amount which an asset, liability, or equity is recognized in the statement of financial position is referred to as its carrying amount. So, yung balance ng isang mga elements natin sa financial position, they are referred to as the carrying amounts. Okay, so, bali ganun lang yun, yung recognition. So, sabi dito, the recognition of an income occurs at the same time as, so it is at the same time as the initial recognition of an asset or an increase of the carrying amount or of an asset. So, meaning kapag lumaki ang isang asset, that there is an income, or the recognition of a liability or a decrease in the carrying amount of a liability. So, kapag lumiit ang income, ay ang liability, you can also record an income. While the recognition of expense occurs at the same time as the initial recognition of a liability or ang pagtaas ng liability, or the recognition of an asset or ang pag-decrease ng carrying amount of an asset. While the recognition naman, syempre kabaliktaran lang niya, kung ang recognition is increasing assets, the recognition, it decreases the elements. Sabi dito, ang the recognition, it is the removal, either all or part, of a recognized asset or liability from an entity statement of financial position. So, ang the recognition is just paliitin natin ang mga elements. So, yun lang ang recognition and the recognition. That is the simplified version. So, do you get me so far, Ading?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's move on for the need for adjustments. Diba sabi ko kanina, yung periodicity concept kasi, the life of the business is divided into periods. Tapos, we need to report the performance or the position of the business for the specific period. Okay, so I will just present our screen. Okay. So, let's assume na let's assume na this is a period of an entity. This timeline. Okay, so ito yung beginning of the period. Tapos, dito naman ang end of the period. Right? So, for the whole period, we need to report either the financial position in points in time. So, either kung ano yung position niya here, position niya here, position niya here. Right? Yung financial position kasi, it doesn't cover a period of time. It just covers a specific point in time. Okay? Pero, ang financial performance naman, it covers a period of time. So, yung period of time yan, that is the accounting period. So, all of this should reflect it's the financial performance. Financial performance of the business. So, kapag nagre-report tayo ng financial performance ng business, we should make sure na nakakover ang whole accounting period. So, ano ba ang nagde-determine ng financial performance ng isang business? So, ano yung element na nagka-cover ng financial performance?
Income and expense.
So, yes, income and expense. So, basically, ang income and expense, it should cover the whole accounting period. Whole accounting period ang income and expense. The problem now is paano kung yung na-record natin na income and expense, it does not cover the whole accounting period. Okay, an example, let's assume that this accounting period is for 1 month. So every month nagre-report ang isang business. Okay, so 1 month lang to. 1 month. Tapos, nagbabayad siya ng expense niya. Nagbabayad siya ng expense or specifically salaries expense let's say, every quincena. Pero haan nga exactly, every 2 weeks kinalatan. Haan nga exactly, hindi siya exactly 2 weeks. Hindi siya exactly every 15 and 30th day. So let's say, second day and 17th day. So dito lang tayo nagre-record ng nagbabayad ng expenses, salaries expense. So syempre, nag-record tayo dito ng salaries expense. Tapos, nag-record din tayo dito ng salaries expense. So, this whole period now, na-report na natin ang salaries expense for this period. Pero, the problem now is, hindi pa tayo nagre-record ng salaries expense for this period, yung latter part of the month. Kasi nga, hindi pa tayo nagbabayad, right? So that is where adjustments come in. So we need to adjust the salaries expense in order to reflect the total salaries expense for the whole month. Hindi lang yung na-record natin. Okay? So, kung ano yun, 17, right? So, let's assume na for 30 days ang isang month. So, kailangan nating compute kung magkanong amount ng salaries expense ang 13 days na to. Okay? So, yung 13 days na to, ito yung i-adjust natin for salaries expense. So, do you get me for the explanation of the need para sa adjustment kung bakit kailangan natin mag-adjust? Adding. Gets you ba kung bakit kailangan natin mag-adjust? Hindi ba? Medyo magulo? Medyo magulo ba? Adding. So, kayo.
Sir, would you mind repeating?
Okay, I will repeat it. Okay, so, basically, kailangan natin i-report ang income and expenses for a whole period, right? So, let's assume now, i-assume muna natin na itong line na to is for the whole period. Ito yung nagre-represent ng 1 month. 1 month to. So, this is for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, tapos ito yung 30th day. Right? Tapos, let's also assume na nagbabayad tayo ng salaries ng employees natin every 2 weeks. Okay? Every 2 weeks. Specifically, every second and 17th day of the month. So, basta second and 17th day, we are paying salaries. So, kapag second day, nagbabayad tayo dito ng salaries. Let's say, ang binabayaran nating salaries every 2 weeks is, let's say, 60,000. 60,000. Tapos here, 60,000 din. So this 60,000, now, this represents the salaries expense for 2 weeks, right? So yung 60,000 na to na binayaran natin for salaries expense, this represents our salaries expense for the whole 2 weeks na to. Tapos yung 60,000 naman na ito, this represents the salaries expense for the 2 weeks prior, including now the previous periods. So the problem now is kailangan nating i-report for the whole period. So kailangan nating i-compute kung ilan yung expense for the remaining let's say 13 days kasi nga 17 ito, 17th day, and ito second day. So yung 13 days na naiwan for the month, kailangan nating i-compute yung salaries expense na na-incur natin para mai-report natin. Kasi nga kapag nagre-report tayo, we need to report for the whole period. Hindi lang yung ilan yung nabayaran natin, kundi kung ilan yung na-incur nating expenses. So that is where adjustments come in. We need to adjust the salaries expense hindi lang based sa binayaran natin, kundi based sa na-incur natin. So ilan ba yung na-incur natin? So kailangan nating i-compute for the expenses that we incurred for the 13 days na dito na hindi pa natin na babayaran. Okay? So for example for process, sabi ko 'di ba every 2 weeks. So this 60,000 is for 2 weeks. So what is the salaries expense for 1 week? Okay, so 30,000 ang salaries expense for 1 week. So, tapos yung 30,000, ilan naman ang salaries expense for 1 day? Hindi ko na alam. Compute ko na 30 divided by 7. Wait, what? 30 divided by 7? So, 4,286 per day ang nai-incur nating salaries expense, right? Everyone nagigets yung pa ba ako?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so 4,286 ang nai-incur natin every day na salaries expense. So we just need to compute for the 13 days na na-incur natin na di pa natin na re-record or na babayaran. So 4,286, 4,286 times 13 days, that is 55,718. So 55,718, yan yung amount na na-incur nating salaries expense for the end of this month na hindi pa natin nababayaran, thus hindi pa natin na-record. So, yung 55,718, dapat i-record natin ito as expense. Yung pagre-record nito ng expense, that is considered as an adjustment. Kasi we are adjusting the salaries expense to reflect the whole month. Hindi lang for the 2 weeks na nabayaran natin. For the 17 days na nabayaran natin. So, gets na yung need for adjustment, Ading?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yung iba? Gets nyo ba?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So, basically, hindi naman ito yung only type of adjustment, pero it is, the main types of adjustment. We have the deferrals and accruals. Okay. So, first is yung, An important information that you should know is that every adjusting entry affects a balance sheet account and an income statement account. So meaning there's always an asset or liability paired with an income or expense. Okay, so dapat there's always a balance sheet and an income statement account. Always remember that, okay? So first is the deferral. So the deferral is an expense already paid but not yet incurred, or a revenue or already collected but not yet earned. Okay, so basically, these are your prepayments. Okay, so it's either prepaid expense or unearned revenue. So these are your deferrals. Siyempre, di ba nga yung prepaid expense, yun yung expenses na binayaran natin in advance, pero hindi pa natin na i-incur. Right? So these are your prepaid rent, prepaid insurance. So these are your prepaid expenses. While your revenue already collected but not yet earned, so these are your unearned revenue. Kasi nga, ito yung mga revenue na na-receive natin or na-collect natin in advance, pero hindi pa tayo nagre-render ng services. So, unearned consulting revenues, unearned referral revenues. So all of these are your deferrals. So, uh, by adjusting, we are decreasing the balance sheet account and increasing the income statement account. Okay? Kasi nga, ang deferrals, hindi pa tayo nagre-record ng income and expenses. So, wala pa tayong nagre-record na income statement account. So, as time goes by, kung nagagamit na natin ang mga assets na to, yung mga prepaid expenses, or na-re-render na natin ang mga unearned revenues natin, we should relocate or dapat natin i-transfer ang mga accounts na to as income or expenses. Right? So, kapag ang prepaid rent is after months, kapag nagamit na natin, ita-transfer natin ang prepaid rent into rent expense. So, nag increase ang expense natin. While yung unearned revenue naman, kapag nare-render na natin ang services, we should transfer it as an income na. Right? So, the income increases, tapos yung liability, it decreases kapag na-earn na natin. So, a balance sheet account, it decreases, while an income statement account increases. Tapos, next naman, yung accrual. An accrual is an expense already incurred but unpaid, while revenue earned but not collected. So, ang accrual natin, ito ang an example of an accrual, ito yung salaries kanina, yung in-illustrate ko. Diba yung salaries for the latter month, it is already incurred pero hindi pa natin binabayaran, right? So we should adjust it. We should record expenses, tapos kahit hindi pa tayo nagbabayad, we should record expense, tapos we should increase our liability. Tapos, the other side, revenue earned but not yet collected. So, ito na yung ito yung mga services or mga sales natin na hindi pa tayo nakaka-receive ng mga pera. Okay, so ito yung so these are your normal transactions na to. So, the entry, kapag ina-adjust natin ang mga accrual, it increases the balance sheet and an income statement account. So there should be an increase in a balance sheet account and an income statement account. So dalawa silang nag-increase. Okay, so an example kanina, yung expense, yung salaries expense na na-incur natin pero hindi pa paid. Right? So at the end of the month, we should record expenses para sa latter 13 days. Right? So we record salaries expense, Tapos, we should record liabilities, right? So, debit salaries expense, tapos credit liabilities. That in effect increases the expense and also increases the liabilities. Okay? Tapos, uh, another example, kung meron tayong services na render pero hindi pa tayo nagko-collect, right? Kung nagbibill pa lang tayo. So, kapag nag-render na tayong services, we record accounts receivable, tapos we record also revenue, either consulting, referral, basta ganun, service revenue, service income. So, from the transaction, it increases the asset, yung accounts receivable, and also it increases the income, an income statement account. So, ang mga accruals, ito yung mga normal recording natin na hindi pa kasali ang yung mga wala pang effect sa cash. Okay? So, that is the simple explanation of the accruals and deferrals. So let's take a look at the specific types. First, sa deferrals natin. So we adjusting for deferrals. First is the prepaid expense. Okay. So ito nga, itong sabi ko kanina, prepaid expense, this is a type of deferral kasi nga, nagbabayad tayo ng expenses in advance, so an expense we already paid, pero hindi pa natin na-i-incur ang mga expenses na to. Right? An example is your prepaid rent, prepaid insurance. Okay? So, when accounting for deferrals, there is actually a pattern. First, we record an asset, tapos ita-transfer natin ang asset na yon. Right? In this case, for expenses, for expenses. So example, we paid rent in advance. So ano yung entry kapag nagbayad tayo ng rent in advance? Can anyone tell me?
Prepaid rent.
Yeah.
Debit prepaid rent.
Yeah.
Rent cash.
Okay, debit prepaid rent and credit cash. So ano yung prepaid rent?
Asset.
Yes, asset. So yun, when accounting for deferrals, we generally record asset first. So nagre-record tayo ng prepaid expense, that is an asset. Tapos, after incurring the expenses, we transfer that asset into an expense account. Right? So kapag na-incur na natin ang rent, so what is now the journal entry kapag naka-incur na natin ng rent expense? What is the debit?
Rent expense.
And what is the credit? Yun na yung related sa prepaid yun. What is the credit?
Prepaid rent.
Yes, prepaid rent. So, kapag na-incur na natin ang ang expense sa rent na yon, we debit rent expense, increasing the expense account. Tapos, we credit the prepaid rent, decreasing the asset account. So, in effect, we are just transferring the prepaid rent into the rent expense. So, transfer lang natin ang amount ng prepaid rent sa rent expense. Siyempre, depende pa rin sa amount na na-incur natin, pero that is still the effect of the transaction, right? So, every deferral, that is basically the same pattern for every deferral. Kasi the next deferral is your prepaid insurance. So, prepaid insurance, basically parehas lang din sila. Nagpe-pay tayo in advance for a specific period of time. So, an example here for prepaid insurance, Wedding R Us acquired 1-year comprehensive insurance coverage on the service vehicle and paid $14 premium. So the 14,400 premiums, that covers 1 year. So 1 year na yon. So what is our initial entry kapag nag-acquire tayo ng prepaid insurance?
Debit prepaid insurance 14,400. Credit cash 14,400.
Okay, so nag-debit tayo ng prepaid insurance, 14,400, and we credit a cash. So, in effect, parehas lang din sila ng prepaid rent, right? Mag-record tayo ng asset, which is the prepaid insurance. Tapos, after natin ma-incur ang expense na yon, which is the insurance, we transfer that prepaid into an expense account. So, after 1 month, ilan na ang na-incur natin from that 14,400?
1,200.
So, yun, 1,200. Computed as 14,400 divided by 12. Kasi nga, 12 months in a year, right? So, 1 month covers 1,200. So, what is now our journal entry in order to adjust for that used insurance?
Debit insurance expense 1,200. Credit prepaid insurance 1,200.
So, yun. Nakalagay din sa libro nyo for those that are wondering. Insurance expense debit 1,200 and credit prepaid insurance 1,200. So, pares lang din sila ng prepaid rent. We are just simply transferring the amount from the prepaid insurance into the insurance expense. So, our adjustment, yung adjustment dito is your yung last accounting entry, which is your insurance expense, debit, and prepaid insurance credit. We are adjusting the amount na incur natin, which is for 1 month, right? So, ina-adjust natin ang expense account to better cover the 1 month na incur na natin. So, yun yung explanation ko kanina. We are adjusting for the amount of expense that we have incurred kahit na hindi pa tayo nagbabayad. Pero in this case, nakabayad na tayo kasi nga deferral. Nagbayad na tayo in advance. So next is your supplies. Basically, the same pattern lang din ng supplies. Magkaiba lang yung way in which we are recording expense. Kasi, di ba, yung prepaid rent and prepaid insurance, it is based on time. Based on sa month, weeks, days in which we have used that specific asset, which is the prepaid. Pero ang supplies, yung expense na i-record natin, it is based on the amount that we have used physically. Okay? Pero the same pattern lang din. We record first, initially, we record an asset account. Tapos, after natin magamit, we transfer that asset account into an expense account. So, an example, sa book nyo, on May 8, Weddings Are Us, purchase supplies 18,000. So, what is the journal entry on that transaction? Can anyone tell me the journal entry? Purchase supplies 18,000.
Debit supplies 18,000. Credit cash 18,000.
Okay, so we debit supplies 18,000 and credit cash 18,000. So, what is supplies?
An asset, sir.
So, an asset. So, basically, pares lang din sila ng mga prepaid insurance and prepaid rent. We are recording an asset. So, this time, yung asset is called supplies. Okay? Tapos, during the month, the entity used supplies in the process of performing services. So, ginamit na natin ang supplies during the month. Tapos, at the end of the month, at the end of the accounting period, so at the end of the accounting period, dito na tayo magre-report. Hence, dito natin kailangan i-determine yung amount of expense. Right? So, at the end of the accounting period, Besario made a careful physical inventory of the supplies. The inventory count showed that supplies costing 15,000 are still on hand. So, nagbilang si Besario. Besario ba to? So, si Besario. So, nagbilang si Besario ng supplies niya. nabilang niya na supplies the amount of supplies that he still has is 15,000. So from 18,000, 15,000 na lang ang natira. So what is the amount of supplies that we have used? What is the amount in pesos? Ano?
3,000.
O, 3,000, right? Kasi nga 18,000 na ang binili natin, tas 15,000 na lang ang natira. So 3,000 have been used. So that 3,000, we should record that as an expense. Okay? We debit, ano ang journal entry to record that expense?
Debit supplies expense 3,000. Credit supplies 3,000.
Okay, we debit supplies expense 3,000 and credit supplies 3,000. In effect, parehas lang din sila ng prepaid rent. We are recording an expense 3,000, tapos we are derecognizing an asset of 3,000. So we are transferring the asset to the expense account. Okay, the same pattern lang din. Tapos next is your depreciation of property, plant, and equipment. Okay? Depreciation of property, plant, and equipment. Wait lang. Sige. Okay. Basahin ko lang muna. When an entity acquires long-lived assets such as buildings, service vehicles, computers, or office furniture, it is basically buying or prepaying for the usefulness of that asset. Okay, these assets help generate income for the entity. There's a portion of the cost of the asset that should be reported as an expense in each accounting period. Proper accounting requires the allocation of the cost of the asset over its estimated useful life. The estimated amount allocated to any accounting period is called depreciation or depreciation expense. Three factors are involved in computing depreciation expense. So basically depreciation, di ba, depreciation involves a non-current asset or a long-term asset. What are these long-term assets? Sinabi na dito. Yung mga buildings natin, yung mga service vehicles natin, yung mga computers, yung mga furnitures, yung mga equipment, these are our long-term assets. Right? So, over time, these assets degrade in value, right? So, hindi naman an asset that is 1 year old is not the same value with a brand new asset, kahit na pareho man sila. So, ang brand new, kahit na parehong Samsung cellphone, mas malaki pa rin ang halaga ng brand new kesa sa isang 1 year old na cellphone, right? So, that degrade in value over time, whether be it due to time or due to the use of the asset, that is called depreciation. Nagde-depreciate ang value ng isang asset, meaning bumababa ang value ng isang asset. So we should account for that depreciation. As that depreciation is called depreciation or depreciation expense. So we should account for the depreciation expense for each accounting period. Okay? So gets ang concept of depreciation, Ading?
Yes.
Okay? So yun yung depreciation.
Yes,
So
sir.
now, the problem now is how to compute for the depreciation. So basically, marami tayong ways in computing for the depreciation. Pero for now, we will be sticking with the simplest procedure, which is called the straight line method. Okay? The straight line method. In computing for the depreciation, three factors are involved. First is its cost, yung amount na ginastuan natin to acquire that asset. Estimated salvage value. So, at the end of its life, what is the amount in which we can salvage the asset for? Right? Magkano ang amount na pwede nating ibenta ang asset at the end of its life. Tapos its useful life is the estimated number of periods that an entity can make use of the asset. So it is an estimated time in which we can use the asset, right? Remember, it is an estimate, not an exact measure. Okay, so yung estimate na yun, syempre depende na yun sa mga experts or sa mga previous experiences. right? So, magiging given na lang yon. Okay? So, the formula now is basically just getting the cost of the asset or the amount in which we used to acquire. For example, let's bring out an example na lang, mas madali. We bought equipment 500 for 500,000. So yung 500,000 na yun, that is now the cost of the equipment. Tapos, sabi doon na after the entity expects to use the equipment for 10 years. So, yung 10 years na yun, that is now the useful life of the equipment. Tapos, at the end of 10 years, the entity also expects to sell the equipment for, let's say, 50,000. Medyo marami na yun, pero yun na lang, example lang naman. So, 50,000. So, yung 50,000 na yun, that is now the salvage value. In order to get the depreciation for the current period, let's say the current period is for 1 year. 1 year ito ah. So, we just simply deduct the salvage value, which is 50,000 from the cost. So, 500,000 yung cost. So, 500,000 less its salvage value of 50,000. That is now 450,000. That 450,000 na yun, that is called its depreciable cost. Meaning that is the amount in which we can depreciate the equipment or the asset. So, 450,000. We divide it with its useful life. Sinabi ko kanina yung useful life is 10 years, right? So, 450,000 divided by 10. What is now its depreciation for 1 year?
45,000.
So, 45,000. Meaning, every year, 45,000 is deducted from the carrying amount of the equipment. Okay? Every year, 45,000 ang nade-deduct sa equipment. Okay? Pero, when recording depreciation, we do not deduct we do not recognize the asset. Okay? We use a contra asset account. Meaning, yung contra asset account, sinabi ko na ba? Or hindi pa? I think I mentioned it last time, right? Yung contra asset account, it is connected to a main asset or main account. Its purpose is to decrease the value of the main account. So in this case, the contra asset is called the accumulated depreciation. From the name, accumulated, meaning doon pumupunta lahat ng depreciation. So throughout the years, kahit 5 years na yon, yung accumulated depreciation, it represents the total amount in which the value of the asset decreases. Okay, so yung example natin, 45,000 per year. So assuming na 3 years na ang lumipas, right? So what is now the value of, what is now the amount of the accumulated depreciation after 3 years? Remember na doon pumupunta lahat ng depreciation ng isang equipment, ay ng isang asset.
135,000.
Okay, 135. Computed at what?
45,000, sir, times 3 years.
Okay, 45,000 times 3. Kasi nga, every year, yung depreciation ng equipment na yon doon sa accumulated depreciation pumupunta. So, after 1 year, the value of the amount of the accumulated depreciation is 45,000. After 2 years, the amount of accumulated depreciation is 90,000. So, thus, after 3 years, the amount of accumulated depreciation is now 135,000. So, every year doon pumupunta lahat ng depreciation expense ng ng asset. Okay? Pero, it still follows the pattern na sinabi ko kanina for deferral. First, upon acquisition of the asset. Sa sinabi ko kanina, the entity acquired equipment 500,000. So what is down the journal entry? Yung nag-acquire tayo ng 500,000 equipment, anong journal entry natin?
Debit. Ako na ba, sir?
Sige, ikaw na lang ate.
debit equipment for 500,000. Credit cash for 500,000.
Okay, so we debit an equipment 500,000 and we credit cash 500,000. So notice that we are recognizing an asset, which is the equipment. Okay? Tapos, after 1 year, i-depreciate na natin ang equipment after 1 year. So, what is now the journal entry to record the depreciation or the expense? Ano yung entry, Ading? And ate?
Ako na lang, sir.
Yung mga iba, ayaw nyo ba, 45,000 ang na-compute nating depreciation, ha? You just need to tell me the accounting entry or the journal entry. Okay. Can anyone tell me? Remember that we are still following the pattern. Ano? Wala, Ading? Okay, ikaw na lang, ate.
Debit depreciation expense equipment for 45,000 and credit accumulated depreciation equipment for 45,000.
Okay, so we debit depreciation expense for 45,000 and we credit accumulated depreciation 45,000. So notice that upon recording an expense, we are still following the pattern. We are debiting an expense and crediting an asset. Yung asset na yun yung accumulated depreciation. The only difference now is that the asset na i-credit natin is just a contra account. Hindi siya talaga yung mismong asset. It just represents the decrease. Okay? So, I will repeat the transaction. Upon acquisition of equipment, we record the equipment by debiting equipment, 500,000, and crediting cash 500,000. Take note na i-ignore natin ang salvage value. Kasi nga, ang use lang ng salvage value is just to determine the depreciation expense of the equipment. Okay, so there is no real effect upon the transaction, yung salvage value. Tapos, after nating magamit ang equipment, we should record an expense. In this case, depreciation expense siya. So, depreciation expense, we record debit depreciation expense 45,000 and we credit accumulated depreciation 45,000. Okay, so the balance now for the whole transaction, yung equipment, meron tayong balance na 500,000. Yung expense, meron tayong balance na 45,000. Tapos, yung accumulated depreciation now, meron tayong balance ng 45,000. The question now is, what is the amount of carrying amount ng equipment? Ano na yung carrying amount ng equipment? Adi. So, ba kayo, Adi? Just tell me kung ano yung alam nyo. What is the carrying amount of the equipment?
For 55,000.
Ading? Ano sabi mo, Ading?
The future is 455,000.
Yes, exactly, 455,000. Computed as the equipment of 500,000, tapos i-less natin yung accumulated depreciation na 45,000. So the carrying amount now of the equipment is 455,000. Pero, take note na nakalagay pa rin sa mismong financial statement is both the equipment and your accumulated depreciation. Nakalagay silang dalawa sa financial statements. Okay? Kasi nga, it is to follow the historical cost principle, which states that the asset should be presented with the amount that we used to acquire it. Yung parang ganun. Ay, di ko alam yung specific sabi doon. Pero ganun yung gusto kong sabihin. Na dapat yung amount na yung cost na ginamit natin or nagasto natin to acquire that specific asset should be used to be presented in differential statements. Right? So, what is the cost now of the equipment? 500,000. So, ipe-present natin yung equipment na 500,000. Tapos, we will now represent the decrease of the value of the equipment using the accumulated depreciation. So, yung accumulated depreciation na ang nagdi-decrease ng carrying amount ng mismong asset. Gets adding ang depreciation and the accumulated depreciation. Adding, do you get the, yung iba, gets nyo ba? Adding, sumumba kayo, tamo.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, let's take a look at the, oh yeah. Sabi pala dito, meron ding extra information dito. The balance of the contract account is deducted from the cost to obtain the book value of the property plant, of the property and equipment. So basically, book value din. Book value ang tawag din sa yun. Sa kapag dineduct na yung contra asset account sa mismong asset. So yung 455, that is also called book value. Pero, yeah, I don't know. So sabi dito, pero akala ko book value yung 500,000. Pero cost. Pero yun na lang. Basta carrying amount, that is, yun yung sure ako. Carrying amount yung 455 adding up. Okay, let's take a look at the examples. First is for the service vehicle and office equipment. Suppose that Wedding or Us estimates that the service vehicle, which was bought on May 4, will last for 7 years. Okay, 7 years siya. With a salvage value of 84,000. The office equipment that was acquired on May 5 ay service vehicle yun. Okay? Meron bang given dito? May given ba na nag-acquire siya? The office equipment that was acquired on May 5 will have a useful life of 5 years. Okay, and will be worthless at that time. Okay, so after 5 years, wala nang worth ang office equipment. Substitution of the pertinent amount into the basic formula will yield the depreciation for service vehicle and office equipment for the amount of 4,000. Okay, di ko alam kung saan nanggaling yung 420,000. Di ko mabasa or baka nalagsa. Basta ganyan ulit. I will totally telatan. So the depreciation now for the service vehicle will be computed as the cost of the service vehicle of 420,000 less the salvage value of 84,000. So yung depreciable cost now is, di ko alam, compute mo na natin. 420 less 84, the depreciable cost now is 336,000. Okay? We divide it with the useful life of the service vehicle, which is 84 months. Kasi ang kinocompute ng natin depreciation for this specific transaction is for 1 month only. Okay? So, 420 less 84 is 336. Divide it with 84 months. 336 divided by 84. We get now 4,000. So, 4,000 ang magiging depreciation ng service vehicle for 1 month. Okay, 1 month lang yun ha. Tapos, yung naman, yung office equipment, the depreciation now will be computed as 60,000, which is the cost. Apart, okay, 60,000 cost. Tapos, because the equipment will be worthless after 5 years, there is no salvage value. Okay. So 60,000 yun na yung buong depreciable cost kasi nga wala siyang salvage value. We divide it with 60 months kasi 5 years siya, 5 times 12, 60 months. you now get the depreciation for 1 month of 1,000. Okay? So, yun lang. Yung 4,000 is for the service vehicle, tapos 1,000 naman is for the office equipment. So, how should we record the 4,000 and 1,000? Can anyone tell me? Ading, how should we record yung 4,000 and 1,000? Ano yung journal entry? Suma kayo, Ading. Wala. Ading, sumaba kayo. Give me the journal entry to record the depreciation for the service vehicle and the office equipment.
Depreciation expense service vehicle debit 4,000. Accumulated depreciation service vehicle credit 4,000.
Okay.
Depreciation expense of equipment debit 1,000. Accumulated depreciation office equipment credit 1,000.
Okay. So, take note that it is specified kung anong specific asset ang nade-depreciate. So, we should specify kung service vehicle, office equipment, building, ganun, to avoid confusion. Kasi, yung accumulated depreciation should be separated for each asset. Okay, so there should be a separate accumulated depreciation for the service vehicle, separate for the office equipment, separate for the furniture, mga ganun. So there should be a separate. Okay, tapos, sa balance sheet naman or sa statement of financial position, the property, plant, and equipment or the property and equipment should be presented as follows. So, nandito yung sa book nyo. Yung sa service vehicle, tapos less accumulated depreciation. So, yung dalawang yon, it is both presented in your balance sheet. Tapos yung office equipment naman, ilalagay nyo yung cost of 60,000, tapos i-less yung accumulated depreciation na 1,000. Okay? Okay, so yun. Bale, basically, ganun lahat ng that is how to compute for the depreciation using the straight line method. So, parehas lang din. Kahit building pa man yan, furnitures, just remember the formula and your journal entry, okay? Tapos, last, for the deferrals, is yung allocating revenues received in advance to revenues. Okay, basically, unearned revenues. Alam nyo naman to. Okay, unearned revenue, kasi yung sinabi ko kaninang pattern, that is for expense. Okay, prepaid expense or deferral na related to expense. Pero kapag revenue naman kasi, basically, para sa liabilities naman siya. So, for the initial transaction, we should record liability in the form of unearned revenue. Tapos, kapag na-render na natin ang services, we should transfer the liability to the revenue account or the income account. Okay, ang example dito, on May 15, weddings are us received 10,000 at an advance payment for referrals made. Assume that by the end of the month, one of the three couples referred has already taken their marriage vows, and as a result, amount of 4,000 pertaining to the referred event has been realized. Okay, so 10,000 ang na-receive natin in advance. So what is the journal entry in recording the 10,000 received in advance? Adding. Journal entry. The payment received in advance. We received 10,000 in advance payment for referrals made. Ano yung initial entry natin doon?
Cash.
Expense debit 10,000 and unearned referral revenues credit 10,000.
Okay, exactly. So, we debit cash 10,000 kasi nga nag-receive tayo ng cash. Tapos, we credit a liability, which is the unearned referral revenue for 10,000. So, after we rendered our services, we should transfer the amount of revenue that we earned. Okay? Kapag na-earn na natin ang specific portion of that, we should record it as a revenue. So, what is now the journal entry in recording the revenue? Ading, journal entry to record now the income or the revenue.
Unearned referral revenue debit 4,000. Referral revenue 4,000 credit.
Okay, exactly. So we debit now the unearned referral revenue 4,000 and we credit the revenue 4,000. So in effect, you are just transferring the liability account to the income account. Okay, so yung liability account is the unearned referral revenue. We are recognizing the liability, which is yung unearned revenue, then we are recognizing the income or the revenue, which is the referral revenue for 4,000. Okay? Hintayin na lang natin kung kaya pa. Accrual for collectible account. Okay. I think we can. I think matatapos na natin to by next meeting. So, yun muna for today. Pagod na yung let's go. Okay, so that will be all class for today. Please read your notes. Okay, para ang kanyang marigatan. So, yun. That will be all. Bye, class.
Bye, sir. Thank you.
Bye, sir. Bye, sir.
Bye, sir.